start. We only have 15 minutes, I guess we'll try to make it quick. We're talking about the concept. We said that Malchus. I mean, we're talking about Malchus of Atzilus, so we're going to get into now. Malchus receives from everything else, and it's able to combine it, and by virtue of doing that, on the point of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is that we're able to receive things from Hashem in a way that actually fits a way that we can appreciate it. So we said we need to have the concept of Gvura in order to limit things, because if you don't limit things, then we're not going to be able to appreciate it properly, because it's such a completely different realm, if you will. We're going to discuss that at length, how things come down. That's really, I think, that if you would want to describe the point of this section of Kuntreis Umayan, it would be to describe how Malchus come down, and also so that we don't get too much good, which could then cause what we call unikas chitzenim, so that klippos can grow. We don't want that to happen, and you need a gvura for that. So, if we recap from the Kitzur, it says hey gvuras the Atik, the 5 gvuras of Atik divide the sustenance that comes down into Malchus. And we describe the concept of Gvurus Geshamim, that rain comes down in droplets and not as one mass of water. And the fact that voice also needs to be divided, otherwise it's not going to mean anything. And the fact that we have 5 fingers so that we can have fine motor skills. And the concept that you're supposed to put the Kodesh Shel Bracha onto the 5 fingers. And we said that the seal on Yom Kippur is to ensure that the hashpah, that the goodness that comes from Hashem, should reach the right places. So, the seal of Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, besides for the fact that its point is that the general shefa, the general sustenance, should reach the level of Malchus, so that it could go to a proper place and to every individual specifically. So the concept of the seal of Ne'ilah is that there should be a general that in general the sustenance should be guarded, so there shouldn't be any sustenance given to outsides to klippos from the kindness which is drawn down. Like the same way that you have a seal, you put it on a letter. The reason why you put on the seal is so that no one else should be able to read it. This is also the concept of the chesam above. This is the concept of a seal, that the seal on Yom Kippur is to say that the hamshach is going to go to you and it's not going to go to chitzenim, so that chitzenim shouldn't be able to get from the hashpah. And this is through the 5 gvuras of Atik, which are received in the level of Malchus. That through them and by their hand, by the hey gvuras, the division of Chesed Eliyah, of Hashem's kindness, which is technically removed from everything, it's able to come down into a way that we're able to receive it in Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus is a big player. Just pay attention to Malchus of Atzilus. This is what our rabbis of blessed memory said, that the sustenance of a person is cut out for him from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. That is to say, that through the level of hey gvuras, which we discussed in the last Maimer, the kitzvah means like the cutter mount, the setter mount. So that is apportioned how it should go to each and every individual. Because beforehand, the Hashem's kindness was just a general that the world isn't going to get a lot of chayas. It wasn't apportioned in any way, like we said with the rain, and you can keep on going on about the mashal, that things need to be apportioned in order for them to be appreciated. And through the hey gvuras, the seal of Ne'ilah, by Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, 2 things are accomplished at the same time. It's they say 2 birds with 1 stone. This is that a foreigner shouldn't come to receive anything from the shefas, and the klippos shouldn't get a unika. They shouldn't be sustained. And also it's drawn to a fitting place. And it's given, it's apportioning so that it should be divided for every creation and to every person in a specific way. Shemalchus the Atzilos Mekabelas v'Neila Diyam Kippurim Mehegvers the Atik Chesed Elyon Shenixel Alidei Hegvers the Chol Olam Esbiriti Yasir the Chol Bria Befrat. Because when Malchus of Atzilus receives at Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur from the Hegvoris of Atik this kindness of Hashem that's apportioned through the Hegvoris to all of the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah, to each and every creation individually, Hine Gam Oza Dayin HaChesed U'Kamoishu the Mailam B'Atzilus Shuvavkinas Tachlis Ruchnis V'Lei Nimtzav V'Lei Nitzayir V'Lei Dayin Me'Hashpois N'Chayis Gashmi the Inyan Olam Hazak Klal. When it's apportioned, it still doesn't have any real connection to this physical world. In the same way that the chayas of this world is not at all similar to the world of Atzilos. And as it's known, that the world of Atzilos is completely removed, like not to scale. In the same way, like you say that there's a scale between 1 and a million. There's 1 is 1 millionth of a million. But 1 to infinity, there's no scale. And there's different kinds of infinities, etc., etc. But Atzilus is completely removed from the world. It's not to say that it's completely removed, that it's to scale, or like a removal to scale, that it's distinct. But with a comparison, there's no comparison between Atzilus and this world. And therefore, in the 4 Yisaidis of fire, wind, or air, and water and dirt, that in general these 4 elements correspond to the 4 worlds of Abiyah, as it's written in Eitz Chaim. Atzilus is the element of fire. It says that Hashem, your God, is a consuming fire. Shenimshal Eish is compared to fire. That is to say, fire cannot be connected to anything else. You can take water and dirt and you can mix it and you can get mud. You can take water and or by Shua's time you can take water and air and mix it and get whipped cream. If the water is special water, if it's cream. I'm saying you can mix all of the elements, but there's no way to make a mixture of fire and any of the other elements. And that is why the nature of fire is that fire is constantly trying to go above, because it wants to leave. Whenever fire is down here, it's next to water, it's next to earth, or it's even in air, but it wants to leave. It wants to just rise above all of that. It wants to leave. And similarly, the world of Atzilus also has no connection to the worlds of Biyah. The Atzilus are likus mamish, because in Atzilus it's completely godliness, and there's no concept of existence at all. That is to say, there's no concept of existence the way that we experience existence, that we are our own entity. Everything in Atzilus recognizes and appreciates that it's completely only Hashem. But in the worlds of Biyah, from the world of Bria, from the world of creation, you have a concept of creation. You have a concept of now something exists. That's what creation is. Atzilus means that it's a very darkistic of art. Atzilus has the notion of things which exist. It has existences, but it doesn't have creations. Nothing exists as its own entity. If something exists, the fact that you would point to something that exists in Atzilus, not that it's been created, but the fact that there is something in Atzilus already is implying something else from Hashem. But it's not that it's a creation. It's not that it exists as its own entity. There's nothing in Atzilus that it itself would say, by the virtue of the fact that I am here, that means that there's something besides for Hashem. The notion of creation itself says that there's something besides for Hashem, which is interesting. This is what it is, that in Bria, once you have the world of creation, the fact that you have creations, the fact that there's a creation means, or it implies, there's something besides for Hashem. The Halam V'Hester, it's the concealment, really, but this is what it implies. This is what the language of creation implies. As the Ramban writes in his explanation of the Torah on the pasuk of Bereshis Bara.
Morning, gentlemen.
And therefore Atzilus is separate from Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah. Even more so from the world of Asiyah, from the physical world of Asiyah, from the physical world of action. And therefore, when Hashem's kindness comes from the world of Atzilus, comes down. There's no form in the form of physical kindness. You don't have the sweetness of an apple. Something we're going to come to later. You don't have the notion of actual goodness that we can appreciate down here in Atzilus, because in Atzilus there's no notion of a creation of an existence that you could say that it's able to get kindness. So v'nechlak al yidei ha'hei gvuris l'chol echad v'echad b'fnei atzmai, and it's divided into hei gvuris for each and every individual. Aval akirlu b'chinas chesed ruchni yadayim. But everything, even as it's divided in Atzilus, it's taka divided for everyone. But it's not practical goodness. It's not money in the bank account. It's not I don't know, the good taste in the apple. It just exists as a theoretical kind of hashpah that exists in Atzilus. We're going to be discussing this a lot, so I'm not worried that we're not explaining it too well right now. And in order so that afterwards this kindness of Hashem should be able to be drawn down into a practical sense, as brachas for children and for vitality and for sustenance. Nice
to meet you.
And this is done by the fact that Malchus of Atzilus encloses itself in the worlds of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah. And as it's written in the Gersa Kodesh at its end, in the Dibur Maskal, in the paragraph which starts with, in order to understand what's written in Priyas Chaim, that even on Yom Tov, that even on Yom Tov, the Chesed of Atzilus is enclosed in Chesed of Bria, and it gives life to this physical world. After passing through Chesed of a Yitzira and Asira, Nikra Gamkin is Slapshus, which is also called a Slapshus, which is also called enclosement. Because if not so, it wouldn't be able to affect in this physical world. Ad Kandiburi, until here is what's written in Yeras Kodesh. And on weekdays. It's caused through a complete enclosement in Chesed of Yitzira and Asiyah. V'hainu, Gamkein al yidei yichud zav nukva. This is to say also through a unity of Zar and Nukva. Zar and Nukva. It didn't really translate it much. But through the unity of the upper spheres and the lower spheres, the Yitzira, which is basically all the spheres that before Malchus, as we said, that each sphere contains within it a certain level of Malchus. And then you also have Malchus of itself, which is how we're going to carry things forward. And the sphere is gone, but not to elaborate too much on Kabbalistic notions. So, so through the unity of Zah and Nukva of Yitzira, and it's not enough to have an enclosement in Chesed of Yitzira alone. Because Zah of Yitzira, I'm going to explain this at the end of the paragraph, I hope. That's Hashem, we should have time. So, Zah of Yitzira also isn't in a Gedder that it should have Ashwa and Asiyah, and you shouldn't be able to have vitality in Asiyah through it. And then it's when the sustenance is carried through Malchus of Yitzira and it's refined, then it's through and it's able to refine the essence of Zav Yitzira. Okay, what just happened? So what just happened is we're saying that in general there's different ways that sustenance can come down from Atzilus. And we described two ways. We described the way that it happens on Yom Tov, and we described the way that Yom Tov, it says even on Yom Tov, which is implying that it's also like that on Shabbos, but the way that it happens on Yom Tov, the way that it happens on a weekday. But just to give the general concept, the way that it happens is that there's a concept of Atzilus Hashem created. And Atzilus is Hashem saying, this is my, in a sense, perception of the universe as it exists to me. Now, there is further, Hashem, the notion of having two existences, which is, if you want to say what Hashem wanted to create, He created a He wanted to have a world where people feel separate from Hashem. So Hashem said, in order for me to have that, I understand this is going to be my point of view, this is going to be Atzilus. And then after Atzilus, my point of view gets wrapped up in a bunch of different layers until it's distant enough that we could say that it's something else. And that, Hashem did a good job. I know this because I feel like myself. I don't feel like Hashem. In Atzilus, nothing's able to feel like anything but Hashem, because that's Hashem's point of view. And from Hashem's point of view, everything is going to be Him. When you have, let's say, kindness that's allotted in Atzilus, Hashem says after Atzilus is going to be a concept. Now Malchus Atzilus is going to be a big player. But we said already the concept of Malchus Atzilus before. The Malchus Atzilus receives from every sphere in Atzilus, and then the point of Malchus Atzilus is how is that able to be passed down. So whatever the essence of Atzilus is that Hashem put into it, so that it should be able to get passed down, goes into Malchus Atzilus, and then Malchus Atzilus becomes Keser for Bria. It becomes the highest level for Bria. If you would want to, I mean, I can start making up Mashalim, but we're gonna run out of time very quickly. So just to say in a brief manner, Malchus of Atzilus, then Hashem says, now we're going to apply a concept of creation. Creation means that now there's an existence. There's an existence which exists. And after you have the existence, now there's a whole new level to everything that I've made. Now, we have to say, now that you have kindness, how does that kindness exist? And that all gets fleshed out in all of the spheres of Bria. Then after that, you say, okay, well, Bria is nice. It's nice that it's been created. But now, what form does it take? And so everything that's been fleshed out in Bria, everything that's been created now goes as Malchus the Bria, then gets enclosed in Malchus of Yitzira. It gets enclosed, it becomes Keser of Yitzira, and now everything is able to come into what form does it take, and then everything gets formed out, and then after everything gets formed out, how is it going to come down into practicality? That it's actually the apple is actually going to taste sweet, and that the sky is actually going to be blue. All of these things, now it needs to have, not just that it takes form. You can describe everything in the universe with enough equations and enough calculations. You could technically rigorously define the table and all of its details. You can tell someone in China how to make this exact table. You can tell them as far as the existence goes, as far as the form goes. But then practically speaking, it needs to come into a world of action. Is the table actually here, or is the table not actually here? And that's what Asiya is. Malchus of Yitzira then becomes Keser of Asiya, and then with that everything is able to be created. And then ultimately there's a certain level at which it goes from being spiritual to being physical, and that's a very, very either you could say that it's a lofty concept, or you could say that it's a lowly concept, however you choose to look at it. The point is that's what we're saying over here. So we're saying that on Shabbos and Yom Tov, what happens is that Hashem, more than just saying that things are going to be enclosed in each other, as in that Atzilus is going to be, not more than saying that things are going to lead into each other. We say things are going to be more enclosed into each other. But more than just enclosement, it's also more of like a blending. Hashem says we're going to blur the line between Atzilus and Bria, how things come down. Hashem essentially says we're going to try to make the world, we're going to try to make the notion of creation feel more like Atzilus. We're going to try to say that entities in the world are going to feel more like Atzilus. There's a story with Rabbi Yitzchak of Raditchev, and I think with this we'll try to read the end and then end off. Hopefully we'll finish before 25 at least. That I forget the exact details of the story, but the point is that he said the line that of course the world feels that it's Rosh Hashanah. He said the river is out there and the river is scared. The river feels that it's Rosh Hashanah. When you have on Rosh Hashanah, we as humans, we're the grubbest of the grub, we're the lowest of the lowest, because this tells us very often. We as humans feel like ourselves almost inevitably. A tzaddik maybe could feel more spirituality. But the physical world, Hashem sometimes brings things closer. He brings things in a way that, yes, taka, it's a creation. We're going to let you have a little bit of a taste of what it means to actually be close to Hashem. So this is the concept that we're saying. On a regular weekday, this is not what happens. We describe the way that it goes down. I describe that outside more because saying Zah and Nukva doesn't really get things across. Anyhow, Asiya, Tzarech Li is Gamkin Yichud Zah and Nukva Asiya. You also need to have a Yichud of Zah and Nukva of Asiya. Because the creation of physical existence is through the level of Malchus, Stavka. Because there's no concept of a king without a nation. And then, besides Asiya Ruchnis, after things go in Asiya, Gashmis, things go into Malchus of Asiya. In Ruchnis, it goes then into practical, physical world. Lamata, Variyem B'yema. Down here, everything for its day, based on the midah of that particular day, Mivav Ksav is to Biyah, from the 6 sides, the 6 spheres of Biyah, the Cholas Chalkus, Ba, Meheg, Static. That all the division comes from the 5 Gvurs of Atik, as we said. Any questions? I really hope you. Okay, good. Okay, Kitzur, Achosim Hu Shegia, Shafar L'Makim Aroi, L'Cholach L'Frat. the seal is to ensure that the sustenance should reach every person specifically. Hashefa Akwali Makabu Malchus Datzilos Ben Ilo who Chesed Ruchim Datzilos. The general shefa, the general sustenance, is received in Malchus Datzilos at the time of Ne'ilah, and it's a spiritual. It's a spiritual atzilistic kindness of Hashem, but that's still not brought down into a practical way. Atzilus moved to Lubriya Yitzir Asira Ke'esh Nivin You say this. Atzilus is separate from Biyah, the same way that fire wants to be separate from all other. You say this. Brak v'shalshis to Biyah. Hine al yidei hegvuris the atik nasa chesed shev erech hanivraim. That only through things going down into Biyah, through the 5 glories of Atik, is the kindness that Hashem tries to give us actually able to come down into a way of the kindness that we can enjoy.
Sure, yeah.
Fair enough,